Thanks to my favorite Canadian, Jeremy St. Louis, for setting the stage here. I'm Tommy Tran. Time for Douzable's top 5 storylines in the NFL for Week 7. And we'll start with Dak Prescott, who he himself has said he wants to be the guy that starts against the Lions. The question then becomes, A, the thumb, and then B, what type of Dak Prescott does Dallas need to come away with the dub?
Well, I think it depends on offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, and I'm interested to see, will he do some of the things that he did with Cooper Rush, right? Simplify the game plan for Dak Prescott until he's really ready to come back. This is his first game since the thumb injury in Week 1 versus Tampa Bay Bucks. I like what they've been doing, the two-back sets with, Elliott in the backfield and Pollard in the backfield, being able to keep defenses at odd, and then also moving CD Lamb around, putting him in bunch sets. That way you can get some rub outs. Easy throw for Dak Prescott. And then some screen plays to the running back have been really effective for this Dallas Cowboys team. Dak Prescott, you don't need 40 attempts this week. Kellen Moore, dial it back. Use the run game. Lean on the defense because your defense is playing at an elite level right now. I would say 20 to 25 pass attempts needs to be the threshold for Dak Prescott, and that's on Kellen Moore. That's not on Dak Prescott.
And we saw just there on the graphic, historically, he's perfect against the Lions, a perfect 3-0, more than 300 yards passing. But to your point, they probably need to be less than that, more manageable for them to come away with the win. So they're laying 7, a touchdown for the Cowboys with a total around 48-49. We'll call it 49. What do you think here? Do you like a total? Do you like a side in this situation?
I like the Cowboys to cover. The Lions are coming off the bye. Generally, teams start a little slower coming off the bye, a little bit sluggish coming off the bye. Now, they are getting healthier, right? Amar St. Brown looks like he will go this week. DeAndre Swift took in practice yesterday for the Detroit Lions. But that defense, it hasn't changed. It's been routinely bad. They haven't been literally able to stop anybody. The only time they've been in games is in shootouts, right? And we saw what happened versus the New England Patriots. Now, there was a freak injury that game, and I think that kind of really affected that team early on in that game with their teammate being carted out in the ambulance in that game. But I think this Dallas Cowboys team is just too much talent up front on both offense and defensive lines. Steele has played really good at right tackle, and Smith, their first-round pick at left tackle, has played really well. And that defensive line is humming. They will get after you. Michael Parsons is going to be too much for Jared Goff in this offense. I like the Cowboys to cover the 7 points.
All right, so that's one quarterback on his way back. Another quarterback that hopes to make his return is Tua Tagovailoa with the Miami Dolphins as they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Again, Tua dealing with concussions. He's missed the half of the Cincinnati game, and then, of course, against the Jets, and then against the Vikings. They've gone in different ways. Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson. What are your thoughts on Tua?
First and foremost, I'm just glad he's back healthy, right? And we'll see what the rest of the week holds, if he'll be able to go and play this game. But all intents and purposes, it looks like he'll be ready to play on Sunday night. And I think it was alarming, or not alarming, but frightening when he said he remembers the hit, but he doesn't remember after the hit. He only remembers part of the ambulance. And I think he said he's learned more about concussions in the last 2 or 3 weeks than he did his whole career. I think we've all learned more about concussions since that frightening hit that he took versus Cincinnati Bengals. But Tommy, talking about the football, the X's and the O, this team was considered one of the best teams in the NFL when Tua was at quarterback. They were 3-0. They're on a 3-game skid right now. The thing is, can they get that mojo back with Tua back in? I've heard things out of the Dolphins camp that everybody has been upbeat this week because he's coming back. Tyreek Hill, no matter who the quarterback is, has still been producing high numbers. He's the leading receiver in the NFL now. Do they get that connection back? Does him and Waddle, who's kind of tailed off a little bit these last couple games, do they get that connection back? That's what I want to see from this Miami Dolphins team because momentum is a real thing, and right now the momentum has not been great. I think Tua coming back gives them a little bit more juice. I think the defense will feed off that as well, and they'll have a really good game this Sunday coming up against the Steelers.
So the defense may need that because they've also been struggling as of late. Now on the other side for Pittsburgh, they're having their own quarterback issues. Kenny Pickett got knocked out. Mitch Trubisky came back to save the day. So the line once again is 7 in this game with Miami laying that one. Or which side are you taking here?
I'm taking the Steelers to cover. I mean, that was a gutsy win by the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. Mr. Trubisky, right, played real tentative his first couple starts, comes back in when they need him the most. Big third down throws on 3rd and 13 to Chase Claypool, finding George Pickens, I believe, on a 3rd and 8 to continue to drive and beat the Tampa Bay Bucks. Also, do not forget, this is the Brian Flores revenge game. He comes back to Miami. Also, Minka Fitzpatrick, he's come out in the media and said he's looking forward to going back to Miami and playing this game. I don't know if the Steelers win, but I like them to cover this game.
By the way, let me follow up because yesterday I had a chance to talk to both our GMs, Rick Spielman and Scott Pioli. Both of them were high on the fact that Mike Tomlin would be able to use inside info/experience from Brian Flores. In your experience in playing days, when you got a coach that knew the other side and was recently, how much stock did you take into some of those notes and information that was passed to you?
Well, it's essentially Brian Flores' defense, right? Josh Boyer is the defensive coordinator. He was under Brian Flores. So they do have some insider information. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest coaches in the NFL. I mean, again, gutsy win versus the Tampa Bay Bucs last week when you're with your backup quarterback coming in the second half and playing almost flawlessly. But if you look at it just from the defensive, schematically, the Miami Dolphins defense, Brian Flores knows that defense in and out because essentially it's his defense. So they are going to have, I would say maybe – be favored because of that, and that's information you will use and maybe try to tweak some things on offense because you know how to essentially attack that defense. But I think Mike McDaniel knows that as well, and Josh Boyer knows that as well. It'll be interesting if they switch it up because they do play a lot of man coverage. It'll be funny, and it'll be interesting to see if they switch up and go more zone when they do bring the blitz.
Let's move from teams that are coming off a loss. Let's start one on the slide. The Jets are hot. I repeat. The Jets are hot.
You heard them.
Taking on a Denver team which is struggling right now. What's changed with this Robert Saleh team?
It's the front four, right? If you look at when he was in San Francisco as a defensive coordinator, he's built this Jets team in the same mold. He wants to get after the quarterback with the front four, not only in the pass game, but he wants to destroy the run game with the front four. Quinnen Williams, I'm just glad that everybody gets to see how good this kid is because he's not been on a lot of primetime games. They got the game of the week last week on Fox, and everybody got to see him show out. Honestly, it was the law office of Quinnen Williams and Quincy Williams because Quincy Williams came back from an ankle injury and had 14 tackles, a couple pass breakups, a couple tackles for losses. But this defensive line has created havoc. 4 sacks last week, multiple hits on Aaron Rodgers. And the run game. The run game is what this offense is built off of. I know everybody's worried about Zach Wilson not putting up a lot of yards, but the one thing he's not doing, Tommy, is turning over the football, which hurt the Jets last year. He's living within the offense. And when they need him to be Zach Wilson to make plays, he does that. We saw the fourth quarter performance versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He led the offense on 2 fourth quarter drives to win that game. Also, last week, when the Packers score to get the lead down to 7, he goes on a 3-play drive, hits Corey Davis on a slant, hits him on a hitch and go, and then the end around to Braxton Berrios, just living within the offense, not doing too much, and the Jets go on to win it. But they literally went into Green Bay and punched Green Bay in the mouth, not only on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball as well.
Although he will look to exercise some demons against the Broncos and that defense, which was then again a Vic Fangio-led team and Nathaniel Hackett on the other side. All right, this is a tight one. Essentially a coin flip. The Jets are getting a point or a point and a half with a low total of 38. Which team do you like here?
I like the Jets to cover, but honestly, sprinkle some money on the Jets on the money line. And again, the one thing I am worried about, right, this is a lot of success for a young team. I want to see how they handle success. They went into a hostile territory last week, going to another one this week at Mile High Stadium. It's good to have confidence, but as their head coach, Robert Saleh, said, the NFL on week-to-week basis can humble you. Can they go out there and be dominant like they did on the defensive line last week? Can they run the ball effectively? This Denver defense is probably the best defense they've faced up until now. Now, they did give up a lot of rush yards versus the Las Vegas Raiders, so I know Breece Hall and Michael Carter will come alive. But if they stop that run game inside with DJ Jones and Dramonte Jones, then guys like Elijah Moore and also guys like Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, who Zach Wilson has a real rapport with, have to come alive. Also, Damari Mathis, the corner that has been starting opposite of PS2, Patrick Surtain, he gave up 4 PI penalties last week. So that's something to watch, especially if they're able to stop the run. If the Denver Broncos do go man coverage and he's on the outside one-on-one, I think Garrett Wilson becomes big. PS2, no matter who he's guarded, Patrick Surtain is taking him out of the game. I mean, he literally cuffed up Mike Williams last week, and Mike Williams was coming off back-to-back 100-yard games. So they have to really take advantage of Damari Mathis on the other side, a young rookie who has some upside but is a little handsy.
All right, you talk about confidence and swag. The Jets certainly have that. Sauce Gardner wearing the cheese head.
You got to love it.
I think in Denver it's the Bronco head or something, maybe something crazy there. So we'll have to wait and see if there's a repeat of that, if the Jets are able to continue what they've been doing, which is been on a heater. Let's talk about the Falcons right now. The record will say 3-3. However, they've got some chances in the division right now. A lot of it has to do with some of the teams we thought were going to be good to fall down. But my question here is, where would you rank the Falcons right now in that division?
Honestly, number one. And Tommy, they should be 5-1 and 4-2.
Okay.
You think about it, week one, Marcus Mariota has a late fumble in that game versus Saints. They were up by 2 scores. They end up losing that game. Controversial call versus Grady Jarrett versus the Tampa Bay Bucks last week, right, on a roughing the passer call that everybody knows was horrendous. They get the ball back with 3 minutes left. They have a potential to go and win that game. So this team could be 5-1, 4-2. Arthur Smith, I mean, what you've done in this run game and how inventive this run game has been is just a thing of beauty and art. I mean, their top running back, Cordell Patterson, is out. But Caleb Huntley and also Tyler Algier, they run physical. Now, that game was 14 apiece with the San Francisco 49ers at half. Arthur Smith comes out at halftime, Tommy, and says, you know what? We're going to punch them in the face. We're going to run pony set, which is 2 fullbacks and 1 running back. We're going to line up with 2 tight ends. We're going to run the football. And you know what? Good luck stopping it. And they really couldn't do anything about it. Marcus Mariota also has been efficient with the ball. And when he does throw chancy passes, Arthur Smith takes the game out of his hands and just runs the football. But he played really well last week. 13 of 14, I believe, for 129 yards and 2 touchdown passes, and also added 50 yards rushing. And his legs have been the difference in the run game as well, because the RPO game and the zone read game puts defensive ends and linebackers in a bind, because Marcus Mariota, if you crash down for the running back, he will get on the edge just like he did last week and score a touchdown.
All right, I took notes, by the way. You said number 1 in the division. That means you can get 6-1 odds at Caesars Sportsbook.
I might have to put some money down on that.
By the way, speaking of money and betting, they're the only team in the NFL still with a perfect against the spread record. They're a perfect 6-0 this year. Will that continue? They're catching just short of a touchdown, 6.5 against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Jamar Chase and company, they're on the road. Do you think they cover?
I think they do. I think they cover the 6.5. Again, this run game has been very dangerous, and this defense is coming along. 3 turnovers they forced versus the San Francisco 49ers last week. And Tommy, it actually should have been 5 or 6. Jimmy Garoppolo got sacked, fumbled, his center falls on it. Brandon Ayuk had a fumble in that game. Debo Samuel gets on it. A.J. Terrell on defense is playing at an extremely high level, one of the best corners in the game. He has a fumble recovery for a touchdown that he almost fumbled through the back of the end zone, but Hawkins, their safety, falls on it for a touchdown. I like the Falcons to cover this game. Joe Burrow in this offense, now they did get going last week. Joe Burrow had 3 touchdown passes and also another run running the football. But I like this Falcons team. They're young, they're gritty, and they will punch you in the mouth with that offensive line. I like them to cover the 6.5.
All right, I know Niner Empire wasn't too happy about that.
I got love for y'all still. I still got love for y'all.
And take care of business. I think they stayed on the East Coast too. Kyle Shanahan did all the, right things to try to come away with the result. Again, let's turn the page there for the San Francisco 49ers. It's a rematch of Super Bowl 54, so we're a few seasons removed against the Chiefs. Right. But still, Santa Clara against a good team. Chiefs coming off that thriller against the Bills. What are you looking out for in terms of these two teams in this game?
Well, for the 49ers, help is on the way. I mean, they had so many injuries against the Atlanta Falcons last week, but it looks like Trent Williams could potentially go this week. Nick Bosa could potentially go this week. And Jimmy Ward could potentially go this week. So that is a big help for this team that has struggled with so many pivotal injuries. I mean, Talanoa Hufanga looks like he'll most likely be out with the concussion this week. Nick Bosa's missed the last few games. Eric Armstead, who's still not practicing yet, has missed some games. Javon Kinlaw has missed some games. So they've had the injury bug worse than anybody, and that's what we talked about earlier, right? Teams that can put a good roster together usually can make a run. Now this game, but the one thing I want to look at is the offensive line from the Kansas City Chiefs, if Nick Bosa truly is back at 100%. Because their 2 tackles, Andrew Wiley and also Orlando Brown, have struggled the last 2 weeks. I mean, Von Miller last week was wreaking havoc on Patrick Mahomes. Also, the week before that, Mad Max Crosby had 2 sacks there, really affecting the quarterback. And even on that interception late in the game that Patrick Mahomes threw versus the Buffalo Bills, it was Von Miller that made an inside move that made Patrick Mahomes go to the outside, kind of throw it off balance, and Taron Johnson came away with that interception. So that's one thing I really want to see. If Nick Bosa is really back and healthy to himself, him creating havoc. On the other side, the 49ers team, we talked about how many turnovers they had versus the Atlanta Falcons. Do they get back on track? Because you cannot turn the ball over. Ball security is job security. You have 3 turnovers that could have been 5 or 6. You're not going to have a chance to win this game. Also, the screen game was really big for them last week. Brandon Ayuk scored on one. Also, Jawan Jennings had an explosive run on one. George Kittle had a couple screen things. So if you look at Steve Spagnuolo and this Kansas City defense, they like to go that man coverage. So if you run the screen and you make the first guy miss, it's an explosive play. So that's one thing I want to look at as well this game.
All right, back to KC. The Bills game saw Patrick Mahomes be a home underdog for the first time in his NFL career. Buffalo won and covered. This time around, they go to the West Coast. They're favored by 2.5 with a total at 48 and a hook.
I went back and forth on this only because the number has drastically gone down as the week has gone on. So maybe Vegas knows something we don't know. Again, help is on the way. Two of their probably best players on the team will be back this week. I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers to cover this game. I believe they're undefeated at home. They play better at home this season. Patrick Mahomes, I can't remember the last time he actually lost 2 games in a row, but I like them to cover this game. I don't know if they win, but I got the San Francisco 49ers covering the 2.5.
All right. Leger, certainly appreciate it. Good to be with you again on this Thursday as we prepare for another Thursday night football game. NFL on CBS. By the way, games that we did not talk about that'll be on our network. Indy at Tennessee, Cleveland at Baltimore. Boy, both those teams need a win. Oh, yeah. And then Houston at Las Vegas. Who remembers 2016, that Connor Cook, Brock Osweiler wild card feast? Oh, my goodness. Sunday NFL streaming on Paramount+.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.